Research on self-criticism shows that people who habitually judge their own emotions experience up to 3 times more emotional distress, not because their problems are worse, but because the judgment itself becomes a second source of pain on top of the original one.
Yeah, it's basically this invisible tax we pay on our own suffering. Like, we feel the initial pain, and then we penalize ourselves for feeling it.
If your inner critic is louder than anyone else in your life, if shame follows you like a shadow, if you judge yourself for feeling anxious, then judge yourself for judging yourself. This deep dive is going to show you the way out. By the end, you'll understand exactly why judgment doubles your suffering and how one shift can cut that cycle at the root.
What we share here at DBT Me is educational real skills you can start using today. We're not therapists, and this isn't therapy. But these skills come from one of the most researched therapy frameworks ever developed.
Yeah, and I just want to pause right here at the start and really validate how incredibly exhausting it is to live at war with yourself.
Totally. It's
Yeah.
so draining.
It really is. Like, if you were listening to this and you feel like you're just constantly battling your own mind, you are not alone. And the thing we really want to emphasize today is that your inner critic isn't some, like, moral compass.
Right. It's not telling you the hidden truth about who you are.
Exactly. It is actually a survival mechanism. Somewhere along the way, your brain just learned to attack you before anyone else could, just to keep you safe.
Yeah, it's a protector, but a severely misguided one.
Severely. So our mission for this deep dive is to explore a specific skill from dialectical behavior therapy, or DBT, called the non-judgmental stance. And we aren't going to teach you how to silence the critic today.
No, because honestly, trying to silence it usually just makes it yell even louder.
Right. But we are going to explore how you can hear that critic without actually believing it.
And that shift, it changes absolutely everything.
Yeah.
But to understand how we dismantle the power of that inner critic, we really need to look at the toolkit we are pulling from. So DBT was created by Dr. Marsha Linehan, and she originally designed it for individuals experiencing profound emotional dysregulation.
And we're talking about, like, really intense suffering here.
Very intense. We're talking about people dealing with intense chronic pain, severe impulsivity, chronic suicidal ideation. It's heavy stuff.
Wow.
Yeah. And to give you an idea of how powerful this framework is, consider the Cochrane Collaborative Review. In the medical and psychological world, that review is basically the absolute gold standard of empirical research.
Right.
And DBT is the only therapy framework they recognize as empirically supported for treating borderline personality disorder.
That's incredible.
It is. And it works because it takes this massive, overwhelming concept of psychological healing and just breaks it down into very concrete, actionable skills.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I know DBT is huge, It covers a lot of ground. So how is this toolkit actually structured, and where does our inner critic fit into it?
Sure. So DBT is built on 4 main pillars or modules.
Yeah.
You have distress tolerance, emotion regulation, interpersonal effectiveness, and mindfulness.
Okay, 4 pillars.
Right. And our focus today is entirely inside that mindfulness module. But DBT's version of mindfulness is very specific. It doesn't just tell you to be mindful.
Because what does that even mean, right?
Exactly. It's too vague. So it splits mindfulness into 2 distinct categories: the what skills and the how skills. The what skills are the literal actions you take. You observe your environment, you describe what you see, and you participate in the moment.
So the what skills are just the baseline instructions, but knowing what to do doesn't really help if you're doing it while completely hating yourself.
You hit the nail on the head. That's
Right.
exactly why the how skills exist. They give you the instruction manual for the attitude and the posture you have to hold while you are observing and describing. You have to do those things mindfully, effectively, and this is the core of our discussion today, non-judgmentally.
So if I'm understanding this, the non-judgmental stance means noticing what is happening right now, whether it's in my environment, my physical body, or my racing mind, but doing it without adding any sort of evaluation. No good, no bad, no right, no wrong, just stating the facts of the moment.
Yes, exactly. Just the facts.
It makes me think of, like, being a sports commentator. So instead of being the biased, angry fan screaming at the TV that the team is garbage and the quarterback is a total idiot, you want me to just be the guy in the booth neutrally calling the plays on the field.
Yes. And think about the physiological and emotional state of those 2 people.
Right. They're having completely different experiences.
Exactly. The neutral commentator just says the ball was intercepted at the 20-yard line. Their heart rate is stable. They're just observing.
Yeah.
But the angry fan, they're screaming, this quarterback is a disaster. He's weak. We're going to lose the entire season.
Spilling their beer, blood pressure through the roof.
Totally. When we judge ourselves, we are choosing to be the angry fan in our own minds. We take a completely neutral biological fact like, I am experiencing sadness right now, and we bolt an evaluation onto it.
Like saying, I shouldn't be sad about this.
Right. We say, I am weak for feeling sad. I shouldn't be crying over this. There is something fundamentally wrong with me.
If this deep dive is helping you see how much of your suffering comes from the judgment, not the emotion itself, hit like and subscribe to DBT Me. We go deep on DBT skills that can actually change your life.
And looking at the biological impact of that angry fan is where this gets so critical.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the neuroscience for a moment, because this is fascinating.
Oh, I love the brain stuff. Let's get into it.
So deep inside your brain, you have this almond-shaped structure called the amygdala. You can think of it as your brain's smoke detector. It's constantly scanning for threats.
Okay.
When you experience a difficult, painful emotion, let's say fear or deep sadness, that amygdala lights up.
Yeah.
It sounds the alarm.
Which makes sense, right? Feeling sad or afraid is uncomfortable, so the brain registers it. But why does adding a label like, I'm an idiot for being sad, actually make the sadness hurt more physically?
Because your nervous system doesn't just read that self-judgment as a passing thought. It treats that judgment as a brand new secondary threat.
Wait, really?
Yes.
Wow. So the initial sadness is threat number one. My smoke detector goes off. And then I attack myself for being sad, which my brain registers as a literal attack, creating threat number two.
It's a brutal cascading effect. The brain processes your self-directed anger as an active threat to your survival.
That is wild.
So instead of just processing the original wave of sadness, your brain is now flooded with cortisol and adrenaline, the stress chemicals associated with being under attack.
Yeah.
Your prefrontal cortex, which is the logical, soothing part of your brain right behind your forehead, gets knocked completely offline.
It shuts down.
Completely. And this neurological cascade is exactly why emotions seem to escalate so rapidly for people who are highly self-critical.
Because they're basically throwing gasoline on the fire.
Yes. The initial emotion, the sadness, might have been entirely manageable. But the secondary judgment triggers that second alarm, and suddenly you are overwhelmed.
So how does the non-judgmental stance actually help with that?
The non-judgmental stance is the mechanism that breaks this cascade. By removing the secondary judgment, you don't activate that second alarm. You allow the prefrontal cortex to remain online, so it can actually help you regulate and soothe the initial wave of sadness.
But wait, I have to push back on this a little bit.
Okay, sure.
Isn't judgment absolutely necessary for survival? Like, if I'm hiking and I see a tiger running at me, I absolutely need to judge that tiger as bad. If I don't judge it, my fight or flight won't kick in. If I just stand there acting like a neutral sports commentator, observing the tiger without judgment, I'm gonna get eaten.
What's fascinating here is the distinction between discerning a factual threat and evaluating moral worth.
Okay, tell me more.
In your tiger example, recognizing that the animal is dangerous is a factual discernment. It's an observation of an external reality based on evidence. Tigers have teeth. Tigers eat people.
Right, it's just a fact.
Non-judgment absolutely does not mean ignoring danger or pretending that harmful things are fine or, walking into traffic because you refuse to judge the cars.
Yeah, that would be bad.
Very bad. It means unpairing the factual event from a moral criticism, particularly a criticism of yourself.
Okay, so I can observe the danger without making it a character flaw.
Exactly. You can neutrally observe, this tiger is a threat to my physical safety, and the effective action is to run away. You do that without adding the judgment. And the fact that a tiger is chasing me means I'm a fundamentally flawed person who always attracts tigers, and I'm so stupid for hiking in the first place.
That makes so much sense. We use judgment as a shortcut for physical safety, but then we take that weapon and we turn it inward on our own emotions.
We do, constantly.
And because the brain interprets that internal judgment as a literal physical threat, it reliably generates one specific, deeply debilitating emotion above all others. And that emotion is shame.
Yeah, shame. Shame is arguably the heaviest emotion the human can carry, and it is almost exclusively fueled by judgment. We really need to distinguish it from guilt, though.
How so?
Guilt is the feeling that you did something wrong. It's tied to an action, like, I made a mistake.
Right.
Shame is the feeling that you are something wrong. It's tied to your identity. I am a mistake.
Yeah.
And the thoughts that act as the manufacturing plants for shame are almost always judgments.
Thoughts like, I shouldn't still feel this way, or what is wrong with me?
Yes. When you feed those judgments into the machine, Shame is what comes out the other side.
Hmm.
And once you are saturated in shame, you inevitably find yourself falling into the spiral.
Oh, the spiral. This is something so incredibly relatable, and I think everyone listening has been here.
Oh, absolutely.
Let's really walk through what this feels like. Let's say you have a social event coming up, maybe a dinner party with some coworkers, and you start feeling anxious.
A very common, very human experience.
Right. So, step one of the spiral. You feel anxiety. Your chest gets a little tight. Step two, the judgment kicks in. You tell yourself, I'm a grown adult. I shouldn't be nervous about a simple dinner. I'm being ridiculous.
There's that word should.
Always the should. Step three, because you just attacked yourself, that anxiety morphs into shame. You feel defective for being anxious. Step four, the meta judgment. Now you're judging yourself for feeling the shame. Great, now I'm making a huge deal out of nothing. I'm so dramatic, nobody else deals with this.
It just keeps compounding.
It does. And then finally, step five, total emotional shutdown. You're so exhausted from the internal attack that you cancel the plans, you isolate in your room, and you feel entirely depleted.
And if we look closely at that sequence, we have to ask, where did the real damage actually happen?
Not at the dinner party, obviously.
Right. The initial anxiety about the dinner party was just a passing wave of emotion. It was uncomfortable, sure, but it was survivable. The wave would have peaked and passed. It was the judgment at step two that accelerated the entire process, turned it into a shame spiral, and ultimately led to the behavioral shutdown.
So the non-judgmental stance breaks this entire sequence right at step two.
That's the beauty of it. It's the most direct antidote to shame because it removes the factory that produces it. If you feel that tightness in your chest about the dinner party and you simply notice it like our sports commentator, I am noticing that my chest is tight and I am experiencing anxiety right now, the spiral stops.
Wow.
You don't trigger the second alarm, the factory shuts down.
It's amazing how much energy that saves. And this shift is also how we break out of what we call the comparison trap, right? We so often look around and say to ourselves, everyone else handles this fine. What is wrong with me?
Yeah, the comparison track is brutal. And the non-judgmental shift there is incredibly simple, though not always easy.
Simple but not easy. The story of therapy.
Exactly. You shift from that comparative attack to a factual observation. You just say, I notice I am struggling with this particular task right now. That's it. You drop the story about everyone else, you just state the fact of your current experience, and the exact same logic applies to the should storm.
Oh man, the should storm. I should be over this breakup by now. I should be happier in this job. I should be able to handle my stress without crying.
Every single should is a judgment. It is a fundamental rejection of reality. When you say, I should be over this, you are arguing with the reality that you are, in fact, still hurting.
Think about the last time you were in a should storm. How much of your exhaustion came from the original event, and how much came from the energy spent attacking yourself? It takes a massive, unbelievable amount of physiological energy to fight reality and hate yourself at the same time.
It is exhausting, and I want to be very clear with our listeners. Once you start trying to drop these shows and step out of the shame spiral, you are going to hit some common psychological roadblocks.
Yeah, it's not a magical fix overnight.
No, not at all. It's important to anticipate these so you don't get frustrated and give up. The first big mistake people make when learning this is thinking that non-judgment means approving of everything or passively resigning to a miserable situation.
Right, like if I have a chronic pain condition and I shift to saying, I am noticing intense pain in my back, people might think that means I'm saying the pain is a good thing or that I'm just giving up on going to physical therapy and trying to heal.
And that's a very common misunderstanding. Non-judgment absolutely does not mean approval. It simply means seeing reality accurately without adding a layer of moral criticism or catastrophic storytelling.
It's not toxic positivity.
Exactly. You can passionately desire for your reality to change. You can actively work with your doctors to treat your chronic pain.
Yeah.
But you can simultaneously observe the pain in the present moment without judging yourself for having it.
That makes a lot of sense.
The second major mistake is a bit more insidious. People think that once they learn this skill, they will simply never judge again.
Oh, I would totally fall for that one. I'd read the book, do the worksheet, and declare, I am a mindful, enlightened person now. Zero judgments from here on out.
We all do it. We set these impossible standards. But human brains are literally built to be judgment machines. Our brains categorize things constantly to save cognitive energy. Safe, unsafe, good, bad. You will judge.
It's just biology.
It is. The actual skill of the non-judgmental stance isn't achieving a permanently blank, perfectly zen mind. The real skill is noticing when the judgment naturally appears, acknowledging it and letting it pass without attaching to it or believing it as an absolute truth.
Right.
And that leads directly into the third and perhaps most dangerous roadblock, the meta-judgment trap.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The meta-judgment trap is when you start judging yourself for judging.
It's the worst loop to get stuck in.
It really is. It's like the old trick of trying not to think of a pink elephant. If I tell you not to think of a pink elephant and then you get mad at yourself the second you picture one, suddenly your brain is stampeding with a whole herd of them. You can't fight it. You have to just say, there's a pink elephant, and casually let it walk by.
That is a phenomenal analogy. Let's apply that to the dinner party scenario. If you catch yourself judging your anxiety and then you immediately say, ugh, I'm doing it again. I'm judging myself. I'm so bad at mindfulness. I'm failing at DBT.
Oh, I've said those exact words.
We all have. But you are just piling on more judgment. You are still feeding the amygdala. You're just changing the flavor of the attack.
You're still the angry fan. You're just yelling about a different play.
Yes. The way out of the meta-judgment trap is to just label the thought neutrally. I am noticing a judgment. A judgment about my anxiety has arisen. When you label it that way, you step right back into the commentator booth. You are observing the fan yelling in the stands, but you aren't grabbing a megaphone and joining them.
It takes the sting right out of it. It's just data. There's a judgment. And learning to let that pink elephant walk by isn't just a neat little standalone trick to make you feel a little calmer in the moment. In the world of DBT, this stance is actually the fundamental prerequisite for utilizing every other tool in the therapy framework, isn't it?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the non-judgmental stance, when combined with the skills of observing and describing, is the concrete foundation upon which the entire house of DBT is built. You literally cannot effectively practice the advanced skills if you are steeped in judgment.
Okay, let's look at a few examples of that.
Take radical acceptance, which is a core distress tolerance skill. Radical acceptance is about fully accepting a painful reality as it is without fighting it so you can move forward.
But you can't accept something if you're busy judging it.
Right. You can't practice radical acceptance of a job loss, for instance, if you are obsessively judging the reality as unfair or judging yourself as a failure. The judgment actively blocks the acceptance. You stay stuck in suffering.
And what about emotion regulation? There's a skill there I know people love called check the facts.
Yes, check the facts is brilliant. You use it when your emotional intensity doesn't seem to match the actual situation.
Like getting furious over a minor text message.
Exactly. But again, you cannot check the facts if you are judging your emotions. If you are busy calling yourself stupid for feeling intense anger over a minor comment, you can't step back and objectively ask, is there an actual threat here that warrants this level of anger?
Because the self-judgment keeps you too dysregulated to do the fact-checking.
Exactly. You're too flooded with cortisol.
And it affects how we interact with other people, too, like the interpersonal effectiveness module.
Hugely. In that module, we teach a communication framework called Dear Man. It's a step-by-step guide to help people assert their boundaries and ask for what they want effectively.
Okay, so say you need to ask your partner to take on more responsibilities around the house, like doing the laundry.
Right. You cannot use Dear Man effectively if you are judging yourself for having needs in the first place.
Because if your inner critic is saying, you should be able to handle all the chores yourself, you are a burden for asking for help, your communication is going to fall apart. You'll either not ask at all and become resentful, or you'll ask aggressively because you're defensive about your own needs.
And then the conversation turns into a fight. Non-judgment is the nutrient-rich soil that allows every single other communication and coping skill to actually take root and grow.
Subscribe to DBT Me and share this with someone whose inner critic never gives them a break. If these skills are helping you in a YouTube video, imagine what a full DBT program with a trained therapist could do for you.
The transformation that can happen when you really integrate these skills into your daily life is profound. When we finally stop exhausting our prefrontal cortex by constantly fighting our own internal experience, we free up an immense amount of cognitive and emotional resources. Energy that used to be spent on shame can now be spent on actually building a life we want to live.
So what does this all mean? It means that without non-judgment, we are trying to build a house on an earthquake.
That's a great way to put it.
You can have the best coping mechanisms in the world. You can memorize the best communication scripts. You can have the most aesthetic self-care routines. But if the ground underneath you is constantly shaking with the violent tremors of self-criticism and shame, nothing stable can ever be built.
You have to stabilize the ground first.
And you do that by making the brave shift from the angry fan to the neutral commentator.
I want to leave you with this final thought.
Hmm.
Emotional vulnerability, when it is paired with self-invalidation and judgment, is a recipe for deep, enduring suffering. It makes the world feel overwhelming and entirely unsafe.
Yeah.
But when you apply a non-judgmental stance, that exact same emotional sensitivity transforms. It shifts from being a heavy weakness into a profound capacity for empathy, creativity, and deep connection with others. You don't need to change how much you feel. You just need to change how you treat yourself when you feel it.
DBT Me is here to educate and empower you, but we're not a substitute for professional mental health care. If you're in crisis, please call or text 988. Find a certified DBT therapist at behavioraltech.org. You deserve support. We'll see you in the next deep dive. And remember, the next time that inner critic tries to tell you that you are fundamentally broken for feeling your feelings, you don't have to silence it. Just notice it. That judgment isn't a truth teller. It's just a second source of pain you no longer have to carry.